There is a realistic possibility Kyiv could break through the rest of Russia's defensive lines in southern Ukraine by the end of the year, according to the head of the U.S. military intelligence agency. Kyiv has made significant progress in recent weeks, Trent Maul, the director of analysis at the Defense Intelligence Agency, told The Economist in a piece published on Wednesday. On Saturday, the commander of Ukraine's Tavria group of forces, Brigadier General Oleksandr Tarnavskiy, told British newspaper The Observer that Ukrainian forces are now between the first and second defensive lines, around the Zaporizhzhia village of Robotyne, which has been a hotspot of fighting in the south over recent weeks. But there is little certainty about just how well fortified the remaining lines of Russian defenses will be. There is a very big difference between the first and second line of defense, Tarnavskiy said, but Maul told The Economist that many of Russia's reinforcements are at the third line. Kyiv said in late August that it had seized control of Robotyne back from the Kremlin. More than a week later, a Russian-backed official in Zaporizhzhia told Russian state television that Russian armed forces had tactically abandoned Robotyne. Kyiv has been launching counteroffensive operations all along the front line, stretching down from eastern Ukraine to the southern, Russian-annexed regions of Zaporizhzhia and Kherson. In recent weeks, attention has focused on progress in the south as analysts say Ukraine's efforts have yielded some success in the road to the Russian-occupied city of Melitopol and, ultimately, the Sea of Azov. Geolocated footage showed that Ukrainian fighters have progressed along the trench line west of Verbov, a village just to the east of Robotyne, the Institute for the Study of War think tank said on Wednesday. On Thursday, Ukraine's General Staff said its forces had success south of Robotyne, and to the west of the neighboring village of Verbov. But in a statement also published on Thursday, Russia's defense ministry said its forces had repelled 14 attacks around Robotyne and Verbov over the past 24 hours. Progress through southern Ukraine has been painstakingly slow, with extensive mines and thoroughly prepared Russian defenses holding up Kyiv's advance. More than 3 months into the counteroffensive efforts, which Ukraine has said it had hoped to begin earlier in the year, another set of obstacles could quickly come into Kyiv's path. Scarce ammunition supplies and deteriorating weather conditions could trip up Kyiv's progress, Maul said, making the smashing up of Russia's defenses by the end of the year a very difficult goal. As the months wear on, Ukraine's forces get closer to facing the country's muddy season, known as Robotyne. This presents an added risk to Ukraine's counteroffensive forces, as the Western-made main battle tanks may end up getting stuck in the quagmires, Marina Myron, a postdoctoral researcher at the War Studies Department at King's College London, told Newsweek. Limited ammunition stocks have plagued Kyiv's counteroffensive efforts. The U.S. unveiled a new military aid package on Wednesday to send additional artillery supplies to Ukraine. We want to make sure that Ukraine has what it needs not only to succeed in the counteroffensive but has what it needs for the long term to make sure that it has a strong deterrent, strong defense capacity so that, in the future, aggressions like this don't happen again, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said during a surprise visit to Kyiv. Newsweek has reached out to the Ukrainian General Staff for comment via email. As the war in Ukraine has become an artillery battle, both sides are scrambling to compensate for a shortage of howitzer shells. Both have had to ration artillery ammunition. Ukraine has also adopted Western-made howitzers so it can use Western-supplied shells. Russia has more cannons, but its limited ammunition supply has accelerated its shift from saturation bombardment to more precise strikes using fewer rounds. On one hand, that's a reassuring sign that Russia can't produce enough rounds to continue launching mass artillery barrages. However, it also means that Ukrainian troops will have to face more accurate, and more effective, Russian fire. Russian forces are still using an array of howitzers, mortars, and rockets, and Moscow is looking for more ammo to keep them firing. But, the trend appears to be towards maximizing accuracy and reducing the number of rounds necessary to achieve the desired outcome rather than resorting to saturation fire, according to a new report by Britain's Royal United Services Institute think tank. This is a concerning trend, as over time it will likely significantly improve Russian artillery, write the report's authors, Jack Watling and Nick Reynolds. Using artillery as a rapier rather than a sledgehammer is a change for an army that has traditionally relied on massive numbers of cannon to compensate for deficiencies in training and tactics. As Stalin is said to have quipped, quantity has a quality all its own. For example, the June 1944 Soviet offensive that destroyed an entire German army group, Operation Bagration, was preceded by a 2-hour barrage by 7,000 howitzers, mortars, and rocket launchers that pulverized German defenses. The Battle of the Silo Heights, which opened the Red Army's path to Berlin, began with Soviet artillery firing 500,000 shells in 30 minutes. Russian artillery doctrine is still largely based on extensive analysis of World War II data to determine how many shells were needed to achieve a specific effect. For example, 720 rounds were assessed to be necessary to achieve the suppression of a platoon fighting position, the report noted. This is the basis on which Russian fighters operated in the opening phases of their invasion of Ukraine. But even with a large defense industrial base to churn out munitions, Russian gunners in Ukraine can't maintain a rate of fire that has reached 30,000 shells a day. Such intensity wears out the guns, requires extensive support, and is less viable as Russia loses the radars it needs to find and suppress Ukrainian artillery. First, Russian forces lack the ammunition to sustain this volume of fire, the RUSI report said. Second, the logistics enabling such a volume of fire is too vulnerable to detection and long-range precision strike. Third, the loss of counter-battery radar and barrel wear have meant that this mass approach to fire suppression is of diminishing effectiveness. Instead, Russia is switching to the reconnaissance fires complex, a concept that uses real-time sensor information, mostly from drones, to quickly call in precision artillery fire on designated targets. It's a system long used by Western armies and increasingly by Ukraine as it receives Western artillery and smart shells such as the S-Caliber, a US-made GPS-guided 155mm round. Russia is now prioritizing production of Krasnopol 152mm laser-guided munitions, with newly manufactured shells being widely available across the front, the RUSI report said. Small drones, many of them commercial models from companies such as China's DJI, fly constantly to locate Ukrainian positions and troop movements. From February 24, 2022, to September 8, 2023, the Ukrainian Defense Forces eliminated about 267,540 Russian invaders, with another 640 people killed in the last day.